What happens when you take a pork loin, roll it up inside a pork belly, add all kinds of flavor and smoke it all day? You get a porchetta. So what I've got here that you might not be used to seeing is a skin on pork belly. Part of the magic of porchetta is crispy pork skin. So we're gonna start by squaring it up just a little bit. It takes a super sharp knife, by the way. Speaking of which, you probably haven't seen this one. This is the new Spartan Ghost chef knife from Dahlstrong. I think it might pass the Shogun as my favorite. I mean, look how it's just going through this thing. There we go. So I'm just gonna put all this in the sausage bucket. I'll obviously take the skin off of that later. So I'm gonna start on this skin side by just scoring the skin, right? So all I'm gonna do is cut a hash pattern right through the skin. This is gonna allow the fat from the pork belly, remember this is a super fatty cut, to drain off while we're smoking and while we're searing. That's gonna help to really crisp up the skin and not have too fatty of a cut when we're done. All right, so I got a nice crosshatch pattern on there. Now, ideally, when you're making porchetta, you're working with a pork belly that has the loin still attached. Normally the pork loin would be up here. That's really hard to find unless you're finding somebody who's butchering a pig for you, or you live in an area where a lot of Italian chefs, which I don't in Raleigh, North Carolina. So we're gonna actually put a pork loin in the middle of this when it's time to roll it up. So right now I'm just preparing for that, but I should just be able to pull this silver skin out. This is a membrane, as you can see. This isn't fat, this is tough. So it's not gonna render down unless we're cooking something like a brisket where we're gonna get it over 200 degrees. So I just wanna get this really tough stuff out of here. All right. Now, I'm gonna cut a similar scoring pattern here. Now, you don't usually see me doing this on the sides of meat that aren't gonna be exposed to heat. Usually this is in the fat cap. We're gonna wanna get as much flavor into the meat as we can while we're smoking. So you're gonna see in a minute why this scoring is so important. Maybe it's as important as the scoring on the outside. But I'm just coming maybe a ½ inch deep here just to expose a little bit so I can get flavor inside. All right. So remember I told you there would normally be a loin down here at the end. We're gonna put a loin on top. There's a loin we got from the same butcher, probably not from exactly the same pig, but this is gonna require just a tiny bit of trimming. If you get a loin that's got the fat cap on like this, we're just gonna remove that fat cap. That's all we gotta do. This fat is also gonna be fantastic for sausage, so if you end up taking a little bit of meat like I'm doing, that's okay, because that meat is gonna end up going to good use. Okay. Because we're gonna roll this thing up, normally if it was part of it, I would fillet it out to get it to the same thickness. So I'm gonna do that now. I'm just gonna butterfly it. So I'm just gonna cut part way down the middle and splay it open like this so that it's about the same thickness as our pork belly. And then the same crosshatch pattern here. Again, not going too deep, just deep enough to get some flavor in. All right, speaking of flavor, here's what we're gonna do for the inside. We're gonna actually toast some spices to bring out the flavor. So I'm gonna start with some kosher salt, fennel seeds, which are one of the core signature ingredients of porchetta, oregano, some sage. I actually got some dried celery flakes that'll add a little bit of umami flavor, a little bit of heat with some hot peppers. So I'm just gonna shave the garlic right in here. This is a cheese grater, also from Dahlstrong, by the way, but obviously I'm not grating cheese today. It works great for spices. All right. And then finally, I'm gonna take some rosemary. I want some coarse, fresh cracked pepper. I'm gonna turn my pepper cannon all the way to the coarsest setting. And that's about a 16 mesh black pepper. Fire up our stove, and we'll get a little heat on here. All right, that's nice and toasted. All right, so we're gonna cool this down a little bit. We're gonna add, I'm gonna use avocado oil. Traditionally, you'd use extra virgin olive oil. And this has nothing to do with the smoke point because obviously we're not gonna be searing the inside of this thing, although we are gonna sear the outside later. But I just like the taste of avocado oil better than the taste of extra virgin olive oil. Use whatever oil you like. All right, let's give this a few more seconds to cool and go get our meat. All right, so let's get our flavor onto the pork here. Not that pork doesn't have enough flavor and smoke doesn't, but this is the flavor profile that's going to make it porchetta. So now I'm going to rub it into each of these slits where I score. Is it all starting to make sense now? All the flavor inside. This is gonna be so good. All right, one more little bit of flavor that I'm gonna add here, and that is the zest of a fresh lemon. This is going to add a real bright, citrusy, not a sharp or sweet like you get from lemon juice, just a bright touch. All right, so I used about half of one lemon and zest to put it in perspective for you. All right, we got one more piece of trimming we've got to do before we roll it up, because it's not gonna make an even roll. So you can see here that there is a few inches left of pork belly, and that's gonna make the skin roll inside. So I wanna take off that much skin from the outside here. So when I roll it, I'm not putting any skin inside. And that's super easy to do if you got a sharp knife. I'm coming across, so I've got a good guide, but now I'm just gonna pull it off. And it's okay to take some of that pillowy fat with you. Trust me, there is plenty of fat in this pork belly that's gonna give us plenty of flavor. All right, so imagine this loin was on the other side, it would roll, and then the belly would roll around the loin like this, boom, and now I've got roughly skin to skin, or I will when I tighten this thing up. So we're using butcher's twine, and I'm gonna start at the very tip by pulling it together here. I'm gonna come nice and tight, and then I'm gonna tie it off. Now, you guys have seen me truss before. All I'm gonna do is form a loop around my hand so that now when I come around the pork, it's gonna become a self-tightening knot. And I want this to be maybe an inch or so from the last one and come all the way around. Now watch, I pull this up, I pull it tight. All right, and I've got my first band, and don't worry if it's not completely closed. I cut maybe an inch more than I needed to, but that's fine. It's gonna be just fine. All right, see how this is coming together? And as I tighten one, it tightens the rest so they maintain a uniform thickness. That's really important, and it's the reason why the technique where you have lots of different individual strings doesn't work as well as doing a proper truss job. All right, now I'm gonna come underneath, end to end, come back to that original knot that I tied and come underneath, pull it tight, come around the sides to square it off, pull it tight and plump it up, and tie it off. All right, well, I guess no more worrying about transfer. Everything is gonna have to be washed. That gets cut. So now we're gonna do something you have seen me do before. We're gonna salt. Now what we're doing is salting this skin because we want to pull all the moisture out. Not only do we want the salt flavor, but we are going to want really crispy skin when we're done. So we're going to dry brine or quick cure if your name's Dash or Victor or some of the people. All I'm doing is getting a good coating of kosher salt all over the skin, all over the outside here. And then this is going to sit overnight in the refrigerator. Hopefully all that salt gets absorbed. The skin is super dry and we'll be ready for a nice smoke tomorrow. Good morning. So it's been about 18 hours. This was in the fridge. You can see all that salt is gone, which means it's pulled out all the moisture from the skin to help dry it out and absorb whatever salt flavor in that it can. It's gonna be good. It's gonna look good. It's gonna taste good. It's gonna be crispy skin, I hope. Let's see. What do you think? Should we go get the Kamado Joe lit? Keep your friends close and your grill gun closer. All right, so Obi-Wan Kenobi here is lit and coming up to temperature. We're gonna bring it up to 275 degrees. By the way, I'm using Jealous Devil Lump hardwood charcoal, and also I'm using applewood chunks for flavor because pigs love apples. So this is gonna take a little bit of time to get up to temp. As soon as it's up to 275, I'll be back and I'll show you how we're gonna set it up for smoking. All right, the dome is heat soaked. So let's go ahead and get this set up for smoking. If you're new to the Kamado Joe world, you haven't seen the slow roller, but if you've been around, you've seen this before. It's one of the things that makes the Kamado Joe such an amazing cooker. So I'm gonna start by putting the slow roller base here, put on the ring. Now this comes right around the side and sits directly in the base. And now I'll put the lid on the slow roller. Now what this does is causes the smoke to come up and around and then swirl inside the cavity here, which is going to provide a lot more smoke than just a Kamado by itself. All right, now we're cooking pork belly, so there's going to be a lot of dripping, so I'm using a drip tray here. And then finally, we're going to put our grates on. All right, so we're going to let those components come up to temperature. We're going to start shutting down our airflow here. We're going to get down to about a finger. We're going to try to control this down to 275. So once it's stable at 275, it'll be time to put the porchetta on. I'll be right back. All right, we are stable at 275. We've got clean smoke. Let's go get this porchetta. All right, so by the way, you notice I added something here since you saw me last. I got these new products from Chef's Temp that I'm testing out. This is their 4-channel thermometer called the Quad X Pro. It competes with that ThermoWorks Signals that you've seen me use before, but it's like less than half the price. And I don't need the billows that I use with the Signals because the Kamado Joe is so much better at maintaining temperature stable. So I'm just gonna be able to use this. Now it does have the temperature probe both for the grate that you see so I can monitor the temperature of the grill, and it's got a probe here that I can put into the meat. I could put actually 3 probes, but I only need 1 because I just want to keep track of the temperature at the very center. We're trying to get this up to 140. So I'm gonna monitor the temperature with this remote that comes with the Quad X Pro. I'll be able to monitor both the Kamado Joe temperature, which I know is gonna be stable, and the porchetta. I probably don't need to touch this for like 3 or 4 hours. It's gonna take about 4 hours to cook, but just because there's hot zones and stuff, maybe I'll check it after 2 hours and see whether it needs to be rotated or not. So I'll be back in 2 hours, or at least it'll be 2 hours for me. For you, it'll be like that. All right, we're 2 hours in, we're still at 275. The pork loin is showing 65 degrees, so coming up slow. Let's check and see whether we need to rotate it or whether it's doing well. I gotta tell you, it looks good the way it is. I don't think I need to turn it. Look at this skin. Come on, that's crazy. Here, let's look at the back here. It doesn't look like it's cooking faster on one side than the other. I think I'm getting a good, even cook. I think we're gonna let this keep going the rest of the way. Probably take another couple hours. All right, according to that 4-channel thermometer, we are at 140. You guys think it's right? Let's find out. Chef's Temp also sent me this X10, which is their top of the line instant read thermometer. This is a competitor to, oh my goodness, where were we? It's a competitor to the ThermaPen, and it's supposed to be just as fast. So let's see, in the belly, we're up at 150. Go down to the middle, look at that. We are right on the money there. All right, it's time for this thing to come out. It's not done yet. What we're gonna do is take it out and let it rest, but we got one more step to crisp up that skin. Make sure you're wearing heat protective gloves if you're gonna do this, guys. All right, I'm gonna take this over to the island and we're gonna let it rest for a minute, and then I'm gonna come back over here to Obi-Wan and we're gonna set him up for Inferno mode. All right, guys, I cannot stress enough how careful you have to be doing this. So I'm gonna take this apart one little bit at a time. First, I'm gonna take the grates. Notice that I've got this hot grease down there. I do not wanna mess with that. Now I'm gonna really carefully take this grease. All right, now I can finish taking the slow roller apart, one piece at a time. All right, now for Inferno mode, I'm gonna mix up my charcoal here, get it all close to the center. I'm gonna put the divide and conquer rack in, and it's gonna hook right into this charcoal basket. We're gonna put our grates back on. All right, now we close the lid. We open up the control tower top all the way. We open up our air intake all the way. And we wait until this thing gets up to 600-700 degrees. Then it gets fun. Is that fun to watch, Mark?
Oh man, the searing.
Yeah. Hey,
wow.
Guys, if you're new here, this is my best friend, Mark. He has one of the most amazing jobs on the world.
Professional taste tester.
Yeah, he gets to taste stuff on the Eat More Vegan show. So we made porchetta. You saw the outside. Feel how crispy this is. Is that crazy?
Oof.
I had to cut it with a sword.
I know. How cool is that?
I have a sword. All right, you ready to taste some? I'm gonna try to get us each a taste of both. We start with loin. All right, so this is the inside. The loin is usually, it's really lean, so it's not usually really juicy. It looks like this might be, but it's been wrapped in pork bellies. So if it's gonna get juicy, this is how to do it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
The seasoning.
Yeah, now it has no smoke. It was wrapped inside. I wouldn't expect smoke to get, but that's a lot of flavor and juicy. All right, you ready for the good stuff? All right. Get a little fat, a little skin. Cheers. Cheers. Next week on Eat More Vegans.